Who's going to be the next head coach at Kentucky? We think it's going to be Scott Drew. That's going to be the conversation on today's episode of the Wildcats Today podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak, writer and editor over at Wildcats Today, joined as always by my co-host, Carson Nash, who's on his lunch break. Carson, how you feeling? It's been a crazy couple days.
I feel excitement. I mean, I feel like the fans haven't been this excited in a long time. And, you got people on the internet saying crazy, coming up with conspiracy theories. Like UK fans are back. We needed something like this, honestly, in my opinion.
And I didn't disagree with what Coach Cal said in his farewell video. Like, people need a new voice. Sometimes you just need change. You know what I mean?
Man, I talk about heart-wrenching. Ellen's video was even worse.
That was sad. I saw that too. But good for them for having, for doing that. They, some coaches don't do that stuff. They'll put out a paragraph. Thank you for, it was cool of them to put out a video saying that. Whether you like Coach Cal, you didn't like Coach Cal, it was cool of them to both do that. But now let's talk future. Carson, I think it's going to be Scott Drew. We'll talk a little bit about Dan Hurley. I don't see that happening, but we'll have the conversation. I want to talk a little bit about VJ Edgecombe, the player currently committed to committed to Baylor, who Kentucky pursued hard, but he eventually chose Coach Scott Drew in Baylor. So we're going to talk about all that. But, I mean, Carson, what are your thoughts on Scott Drew as Kentucky's next coach?
Yeah, so, last podcast, I kind of alluded to, like, maybe he wouldn't move the needle for me. Yeah. But the more this hire sits on me, the more I'm starting to like it.
Yeah.
I stayed up last night and I watched some of his interviews and the way he runs his team. And I started to start to fall in love with the idea of Scott Drew. I mean, he's a great person. I mean, he is an all-around phenomenal person.
Yeah.
He's a very Christian. He puts God first. He's very active in the community. He's just a really, really good person. And I think UK fans are kind of like, oh, he's gonna be too nice. Like we don't want someone who's too nice. We need someone with swag, with like he want to rip your throat out. I think Scott Drew actually has that. I just think he does it behind doors. I think he does it when it's needed to spark a team, not to just Cal had it, or I don't even know if he had. He definitely had it, but I think he lost it there at the end. Yeah. I think, and then you're not going to run into the troubles of like not going to media after the game, not not talking to Scott Drew will go in KSR. Like you're gonna have a coach who's willing and able to talk to the fans and get their perspective and where they want to see this program go. And he's a program first guy. He's always talked about Baylor. He's like, Baylor is what it means. The last names don't matter. It's the program. The program's bigger than anyone around. And I love that. I love hearing that because that's what Kentucky is. Kentucky's the program. It's the program. And I'm assuming if he is hired, he's going to want to return Kentucky to the top tier program.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like Scott Drew, and I was right there with you, Carson. When it was first Scott Drew, I was like, okay. Like I would have gotten more. At first, I'd have gotten more hyped up about Oates, Hurley, or maybe even Donovan. But now it's like I'm with you. The more it's sitting on me, I'm like, he recruits, he develops talent. He does it all. There's been some questions about. Do you have any tournament success concerns? I know he won the Natty in 21, but do you have any tournament success concerns?
Not necessarily. I know he got bounced early with one of his 1 seeds, but he did end up losing to North Carolina, who went to the Final Four. Or actually, they went to the championship game that year. So he lost to Baycott's team the year we actually whooped him with Oscar, and I think that was the same year we got bounced in the first round. I could be wrong. But
that was St. Peter's year, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was St. Peter's year. But I'm not too terribly concerned. Once again, I mean, the dude, Baylor had like I don't know. I would say it was under 20 plus winning seasons before
Yeah.
Scott Drew was there. They had sanctions right before he even got there. And he completely turned them into a national championship program.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't trust that dude to come into Kentucky with the resources and the fan base and everything behind him and make us elite, I don't understand what the issue is. I see a lot of people are like, "Oh no, Scott Drew, I'm out on Scott Drew," but then they don't have a reason as to why
Yeah.
they're out on Scott Drew.
Well, I mean, I'll throw a couple points at you. We aren't in the room, you and I, Carson, when recruiting goes on. And I'd like to be, but we aren't. But here's the deal. Kentucky, you wanted Edgecombe. Cal wanted him. I think Coach Drew put him in the locker. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know that. Maybe Cal backed off. So what I'm saying is I don't want to see a comment like, well, Cal backed off. Nobody, we don't know. But this is a top 5 player. You're telling me Cal's like, nah, we're good. Don't want him. Yeah, you wanted him. And Scott Drew got him. And we often say Calipari's the best recruiter in college basketball, which I would still probably take Cal recruiting wise over Drew. But I will say this, X's and O's, it's not even a debate. Not even a debate. So you get Scott Drew to Kentucky and resources. I don't know much about Baylor's NIL. I'll have to look into that. But what I do know is that at some point, NIL money's great, but what's right here on a Kentucky uniform, the name on the front of it, is what's going to sell to a lot of players. If you're playing at Kentucky, you're going to get paid. That's just the reality. If you are a scholarship player for the University of Kentucky basketball team, you are going to make a lot of money. People will find you. You know, Reed had 1 million NIL deals. Rob, Just everybody had huge NIL deals. That's not a problem. The problem is going to be winning with the talent. You know what I saw someone compare Kentucky basketball to?
What?
And I think it's a really solid point. Texas A&M football. They've got we kind of like I've seen a lot of comparisons between Jimbo Fisher and Coach Calipari, which is hilarious. But you know, it's
I
the
can
same
see
story.
that. I can
Yeah,
see that
exactly.
more of like than a Texas A&M does have a lot of resources. I just their history isn't.
No, there's no history behind it, but they were getting the players and they weren't succeeding with them. And I think you could argue once Cal kind of hit that period, he stopped succeeding with all of this talent, whenever it was. You could say it was 2019, whatever you want to say it was. But the point is, I think that Coach Calipari was not succeeding with arguably, you could say every year, a top 3 roster in the sport. And now I think you're bringing in a guy who's going to have balance, assuming Scott Drew is the coach. Balance between recruits, transfer portal additions, 4-year guys you recruit that are the 70th best player in the class, but they stick around for 4 years. You're going to have balance of that. Like, look at his class right now at Baylor. He's got Edgecombe, who we assume will be a lottery pick, but then he's got 3 other commits who are guys, ranked in that 70, 40, whatever range, where it's like they'll be here for a few years unless they're randomly crazy good and get drafted, which happens every once in a while. And if that happens, all that means he's a great talent. He can see talent better than anybody. So I like the way he runs his program. I think that he's going to have, and is it resources? I don't know much about Baylor's NIL fund. You can assume, but what I'm saying is with the name on the front of that jersey, Kentucky, it's going to be easy for him to sell his vision, get players, and I think he's going to develop talent, and the X's and O's compared to Coach Cal won't even be on the same universe. So I'm in on Scott Drew. And it's not, it's what it's going to be now, so we have to be in on it. No, the more I did research, like you said, Carson, I'm bought in on this. So,
Yeah.
Carson, give me some final thoughts on Coach Drew, and then we'll talk a little about Hurley and a little bit about Edgecombe.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a top 10 offense the past 4 years. In Kim Palm or whatever. He's an elite coach. I sat last night and watched 10 minutes of his inbound play sets. I mean, he has a billion inbound play sets.
Yeah.
I just think he's an elite coach. And the people that are, and here, Hurley back-to-back champion. He's a fantastic basketball mind, and he's got all the fire in the world.
Yeah.
Some of his antics I'm a little skeptical about, but if you're one of the Hurley people and you won't accept Scott Drew, let me try to talk you off that bridge. I I think that Hurley coming in, right, you're going to offer him $11 million a year, maybe even more. And
And he's
then
making
you'll,
5 right now at UConn. So think about
yeah,
that.
yeah. And you're going to offer him $11 million a year at UK. And you'll have probably not as much left, to do NIL stuff. But if you go with Scott Drew, you got to pay him what, $6 million, but you get an additional 10 million to go out and recruit with NIL. And also, Hurley's coming off back-to-back national championships.
Yeah.
We're Kentucky fans. What do we expect? We expect championships. Hurley will come in here with all the pressure in the world to deliver a championship quick. And it might be a little unrealistic if he comes in for us to expect us to go straight to where UConn's at right now.
Yeah.
Because he's had time to build that program up. So I just think if you're looking at it that way, Hurley has more of a chance to fail here than Scott Drew does to succeed. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I'm with you. I
I just
I
look
would
at
have
it that
loved
way.
Hurley. I would have loved Hurley. I love that he wears the same underwear to every game. Like, that stuff's great. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Got dragons on him. Like, that's awesome. But I'm with you. Here's the deal. I would still take Hurley right now over Scott Drew. I would. But I think that you could argue Hurley is the best coach in college basketball right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's reality. So it's like, could you get any better than that? I don't know. So I love Scott Drew, though. I think he's a good fit for Kentucky. I think that you're right. I think he's one of those, he's fiery on the court, but I think he's just a good dude off it. I think he's a really, he's a great guy off the court. On the court, he wants to beat you by 100 points. And I love that. That's how you don't want to be the person that's kind of I don't have a nice word, not a great person on the court, but on the court, you can be not a great person. But when, you know what I mean? Let me repeat this, a competitor. But you don't want to be that guy off the court that's arrogant and stuck up and full of himself. No, be and I don't think that's who Scott Drew is. I think he's a good person, but on the court, he's got that fire that we're talking about. I like it. So I will say it right now. I will stake my claim. I believe Scott Drew will be the next head coach of the University of Kentucky, and I believe he will get us our very next national championship. I'm in on that. So those are thoughts on Hurley. I mean, it does sound like they offered him the job. I never thought it was going to happen. I hoped, but I never thought it was going to happen. I thought, especially after he won that championship, I mean, you just can't, because you got to go for the three-peat. You can't do, like, it's like, you know what I mean? You can't end on a miss when you're shooting hoop. Like, it's like that. Like, you can't do it now.
I just hope, I hope that the details will leak at some point, and I hope that he at least was the first call.
I do hope that they told, I hope that we made him say no,
Yeah.
because I can live with
and
that.
I hope that UConn has to pay for him.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because that's also a part of this that a lot of people don't understand is we're going to contact Hurley. We'll offer him 11 million. UConn can't get to 11. They're like $14 million in deficit from their football program, which is an FCS program.
Yeah, that's
and so they can't they can't pay him. They can't pay him what we can pay him. So at least make UConn go to the point where they're like at the very wits end of all their money, so they can't have anything for NIL. Leave Hurley with no NIL, so he has to go settle for players that he wouldn't normally settle for.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, give me 10-second thoughts on Edgecombe. Do you think if Kentucky hires Scott Drew, is he a Wildcat?
Yeah, I'll give you even better. I think if Scott Drew is ultimately the coach, I think Edgecombe will be a Kentucky Wildcat. I mean, he thought about us before even committing to Baylor. So we were one of his top 3, and then there's his guy is our coach now. So there's no doubt in my mind that he would follow him to Kentucky. And I also think that the Scott Drew hire would make Jaden Quainton stay as well, because Quainton's second option was Baylor. So I think you get Edgecombe to stay. I think Quainton stays, and I think there's a good chance he could talk Reed Shepherd into returning for another season. So I think those 3 could be your stepstones, and not to mention they have a really, really good player who's considering the draft, but also considering coming back. His Yves Messi, he's their big guy. If he could get him to come too, then now you're talking. Scott Drew ultimately becomes, hey, you got a really good roster in his first year.
Yeah. No, he'll compete. He'll compete immediately at Kentucky there's no Kentucky will have a top 25 basketball team next season. It's not like this will not take time. Even if he's got to go get 11 dudes in the portal, I believe in him to bring a group together that can compete right now. So That's where we sit. This will be up at about 2.
What do you think about us not reaching out to Nate Oates?
I talked to a friend, a buddy of my dad's, and he made a really solid point of like, I just don't. I think Nate Oates. I don't know if Kentucky's a Nate Oates job. The more I think about it, I mean you can say the same thing with Bruce Pearl. The expectations for at Auburn and Alabama have already been exceeded. It's kind of like Stoops at Kentucky. You could honestly make that argument. It's like, hey, dude, you win 7 games, you get us to a bowl game, we're gonna love you. Yeah. And I think I'm not saying Nate Oates doesn't want to compete, but I just Kentucky, there is a lot that goes into Kentucky's not a job for everybody, and it's reality. That is reality. So I wish I would have liked Nate Oates, but then when I talked to my dad's buddy, kind of like, I agreed with him. Like, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about, like, is he happy where he is? Is he a fit for Kentucky? And I think Scott Drew has gotten that program for a longer period of time to where he is, a top
and a worse off program.
Yes.
Let's not forget. The Bama has unlimited resources pretty much. I mean, it's Alabama. Baylor's in Waco, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Drew built that from no facilities, no nothing. He wasn't even flying private to recruit players. You realize that up until the last couple years. Like, this dude built this from the ground up, and he's been super successful. He kind of got screwed over during the COVID year because his team was top 2 in the country, and they could have won the whole thing that year. And then he wins it the year after, and then he has a 1 seed very recent. I mean, let's not act like Scott Drew's not an elite coach.
Yeah.
And also, I think Nate Oates and the whole Brandon Miller situation had a lot to play into it from last year. I think we didn't really reach out because, Mitch is very straight and forward, very conservative. He doesn't like all the off the court nonsense.
Yeah.
He's not that type of guy. And the fact that they had that whole situation, we won't get too deep into that, but I think that really took Nate Oates out of the running.
Yeah, because I don't think he handled that perfectly. But that's I want to say one more thing before we call it a day. So Scott Drew, assuming this is him or this is like a burner. No, this is his account. He had lunch. He just tweeted, "Great lunch spot in Waco on a rainy day, and no better friend and supporter than Eric Shiro and Alliance Bank." I don't know what the point I want to make in this. You pull that tweet up so you can see what I'm talking about.
I just saw it.
So the reason I bring that up is very simple. Coaches don't want to burn bridges. Okay. That tweet, Baylor fans, welcome, because you're going to be here. And we know that. Welcome. Good to have you. That tweet doesn't mean he is or isn't coming to Kentucky. That tweet doesn't mean he is or isn't leaving Baylor. Like, coaches don't want to burn bridges. You don't want to do what Calipari.
You never know where you have to go back to.
And you never know, like, what if Hurley tomorrow's like, sure, okay.
Yeah.
They're going to take Hurley. That's not going to happen. But I'm saying you don't want to be like Scott. You'd be like knocking on the door, like, let me in after that. Like, you don't want to do that. So I think a lot of folks are going to be like, oh no, Coach Drew posted this. He's not leaving. That doesn't mean anything. You know how many times of coaches, Coach, are you interested in the Kentucky job? Nah, I'm happy here. I'm not gets hired at X, Y, and Z school the next day. That happens with every coaching search. So don't read too much into any of that kind of stuff. Let's just see what happens. I have a feeling we're going to know who Kentucky's next head basketball coach is before Friday or on Friday. I just hope it's not Saturday because
I wouldn't even be surprised if it's tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah. So that's my take on it. Let's just hope it's not Saturday because that would kill a fun day. But yeah, I mean, that's my take. Carson, any other thoughts on this?
Not really. I mean, there was a lot of speculation that Mitch and the Crafts went down to meet with him today. Some people thought he was flying back here. There's a lot of different speculations, but there's honestly too much smoke to not think that something had happened. Whether it was a meeting there, it wasn't here, but I assume that the Crafts and Mitch went down there to go talk to him today.
Yeah.
Because there was big accounts reporting that they had been in talks. So I think they went down either just to get a filling out process, like maybe they didn't even talk about contract
Yeah.
stipulations. Like, would you even want to come here? Like, it's more than just a coach. It's a family thing. Like he has kids, he has a wife. Like there's
He's
more
a
that
good
goes
fit.
into it.
Yeah.
So I think they did end up meeting, and I think they did go down there. And shout out to longtime listener Cam Boff. He texted me bright and early this morning at like 8 a.m. and he was like, yeah, because he knows some people, and he's like, yeah, Mitch and the Crafts are getting on a private jet to go meet with Drew, and then it just starts breaking. Everyone, Shannon the Dude tweets it out. That starts breaking later in the day. So shout out to Cam. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Shout out to the home run he hit off our good buddy RJ in high school that has yet to land.
Cam threw a shutout and had the only hit home run. He carried the Dunbar Bulldogs.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Wildcats Today podcast. We'll be back. We'll have more news. As stuff breaks, we'll be here. So stay tuned in. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button, all that stuff. Notifications, so when we post, you're ready for it. So hit all those buttons. It helps a ton. And don't forget, we are wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcast, any of those places. You can find us there too if you just type in Wildcats Today podcast. So, but that's going to do it. Check out the Wildcats Today, our writing as well over on SI. I got a ton of stuff going on right now, of course, amidst all of this craziness. So check that out. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day today, and we will hopefully see y'all and Scott Drew at some point here in Lexington soon. Have a good one, y'all. See you next time.